Periscope, Ty Crandall here with Credit.
We're talking about pitfalls to avoid when it comes to choosing your business entity and choosing your business name. So this is an important topic for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, I'm really big on building business credit because I'm very big on separating your personal credit from your business credit, separating liability. It's also very important that you choose a name that makes sense for your business that helps you avoid a bunch of different pitfalls. For example, just by choosing the wrong kind of business name, the name itself can get you denied for loans. The name itself can get you denied for business credit. So today we're going to talk more about names. We're going to take more about entities. We're going to talk more about choosing an entity that is the most makes sense entity that doesn't have bad repercussions for you. Hey, Big LLC, welcome. Thanks for coming in. We're also going to talk about choosing the right name and the right entity as well. So the right name for your business and the right entity. And we're going to talk about 7 pitfalls that you need to avoid when you're doing both of these. Because again, if you choose the wrong name, if you choose the wrong entity, some severe things can happen. 1, you could take on personal liability for your business debts where you don't want to. Or 2, you can automatically even choose a name that gets you denied for financing and credit, as well as a bunch of other repercussions we're going to look at right now. So let's jump to the whiteboard. So today we're going to talk about 7 pitfalls to avoid when choosing both your business entity and your business name, which can cost you loans, credibility, and customers. So let's look here at number 1. So when we talk about business entity and names, first of all, it makes a financial difference. What you choose here makes a big difference on the kind of credit you can obtain. It also makes a difference in the actual ability to get financing. That's why this is so important. Now, the IRS recognizes, for example, sole proprietorship, partnership, corporations, and LLC. So when I talk about an entity, you may not know what an entity is. This is exactly what an entity is. Donald Trump's on here. Want to name my company after my father? I like that. That's fantastic, man. That's great. I might have to block you because I think you're a troll, but we'll see what happens. So the IRS recognizes 4 different kind of entities: sole prop, partnership, corporation, and S corp. So when we talk about entities, these are the 4 that we're talking about here, okay? Now, LLC is not seen as an actual separate entity. You need to know that. It's not considered a separate entity, but a lot of people file as an LLC, and we'll talk about the best entities to choose here. So let's talk about these pitfalls that you need to avoid. Well, let's first talk about taxes, because none of us like taxes and we want to avoid taxes. Well, as a sole proprietorship, you are the owner. You and the business are one and the same. So what happens is you as the owner are actually paying taxes on the profit, okay? So yes, you can, sure, you can't write off your taxes. No, but that's a great thought. I love the way you're thinking, Donald Trump. So sole proprietorship, you are the owner, okay? So the owner is paying taxes on the profit, not the business. The owner is paying taxes, so that's something to consider. A partnership is basically a pass-through. So the profit or loss is passed to the partner. So it's kind of like a sole proprietorship, but the difference is a partnership usually has more than one person involved, and a sole proprietorship is just what it's described as, one person involved, okay? So that being said, let me see, go ahead and do this. All right, so that being said, when you come in here, it's important to know that as a sole proprietorship, you're filing taxes as the owner. The taxes, the profit, the loss comes over to you as the owner. As a partnership, the taxes and loss come to all partners involved, so something else to think about as well. Now, corporations double tax on profit and dividends, because what happens with a corporation, the reason you're being double taxed is because you as the owner get taxed. Then the business is separate from you, so the business pays taxes and you pay taxes as well. A sole proprietorship, a partnership, even an S corp, that's not necessarily the case, but with C corps that is. And an LLC is not taxed, okay? Members actually are paying the taxes. So a lot of different benefits, and let's what all this really means. So when you choose an entity, taxes are important, and here's why. I'll give you an example. When I started my first businesses, I was an S corporation. I was okay with the fact that the profit or loss from the business carried over to my personal taxes. And here's the benefit of that. The benefit is I didn't have to pay taxes for the business and taxes as an individual. What happened is I only had to pay taxes once. The profit and loss from the business carried over to my personal taxes, and I paid taxes on the profit and loss included into my income. Now as a C corporation, our company gets taxed by by the IRS. Right now, it's about 40%. With the new tax code, it's closer to like 25%. But then I get paid individually and I get taxed as well. So now the business gets taxed and I get taxed as well. So when it comes to entity, which are the best ones to choose? It depends on their size. Ultimately, something like an S corporation is perfect. I like LLCs. I like corporations. I think you should choose those because, as you're going to find out, you can separate your liability with those. So if you go along the line of a corporation, if you're going to be a smaller company, probably less than $500,000, definitely less than $1 million, then you probably want to consider an S corporation. It helps you with a lot of purposes, including separating your entity, and you need to know that your profit and loss will carry over to your personal taxes, but you're not double taxed. Now, as you grow bigger, you probably want to move over to a C corporation. Because with a C corporation, you're going to pay taxes as an individual, the business will pay taxes, but you don't really care. At that point, the business is growing, so it's okay that the business separates taxes. You probably want to be separate from the business. So I'm not an accountant, but I will tell you that from my experience, when it comes to entities and taxes, corporations are probably one of the best entities to actually use. An S corp when you're smaller, a C corp as you. Next thing that it comes down to a pitfall to avoid is liability. So with the sole proprietorship, the owner's on the hook in court. If the business gets sued, you get sued because you and the business are one and the same. Now with the partnership have full shared liability. This is why a lot of legal entities, a lot of attorney firms have to be partnerships, or they have to be an entity where the owners can get sued. They want the attorneys to actually be liable, but the rest of us have a choice. So with partnership entities and sole proprietorships, you as the sole proprietorship, sole owner, or partner can individually get sued. If the business gets sued, you get sued. Corporation protects you as a shareholder. Your assets are separate. You and a corporation are separate from each other. So what this means is it means that if somebody sues the business, they can't come after your personal assets. Your shareholder of the business, your assets are protected. Now, as an LLC, members are not protected from debts or lawsuits. It's something to think about. Okay, you don't have this. It's a limited liability. You do limit your liability, but you're not completely protected. So for this reason, you really want to consider a corporation. You and the business are separate from each other, and this protects you as the shareholder's assets. So far, when we look at entities, corporation makes the most sense because it helps you pay the least amount of taxes when you're small, and then you can pay more taxes as you get bigger, where the actual taxes and the profit and loss don't roll to your personal tax returns. Liability, again, you want to choose a corporation because sole proprietorship and partnership, you're completely liable, and LLC doesn't fully protect you as well, although it does limit your liability. So let's look at cost and shares. So as a sole proprietorship, you basically have 100% ownership of the business. Sole, you are the only proprietor. You are the only owner. Now, partners varies if not specified. So this is specified in partner agreements. So usually it's an equal split if not, which means the cost, the actual shares of the business are shared equally amongst partners unless it's specified in an agreement a different way. And the corporation depends on the amount of shares that you own. So as a corporation, you can choose how many. So let me give you an example. Let's say you own a corporation, and let's say you have grandpa, grandma, friend, family member that wants to give you money to grow the business. You could make them a shareholder, give them as many shares as you want to give them, and based on the total amount of shares the business has and the total amount that you've given them, determines how much ownership they have. So for simple math purposes, let's say you set up a corporation, the corporation has 1,000 shares, you give a buddy 100 of the shares because he's giving you money to start the business, he would have 10% ownership of the business. But you determine that. You determine how many shares are in play in the business. You determine how many shares you may gift, give, or sell to somebody else. So how many shareholders are in a corporation and the amount of ownership or shares that each shareholder has is determined by you in a corporation, which is another reason so far corporations make a lot of sense. You can separate your liability. You can control your taxes. And again, with this, you can also determine how many shareholders you have and how many shares they all have. Now, when it comes to names, a generic name can help and hurt you. And let's talk about both ways here. Hey, good afternoon, Charlize. Thanks for coming in. So potential customers have no reason to check you out or do business with you if they don't even know what you do. And this is why having what you do in your business name may make sense, okay? Because you can lose marketing potential because your name doesn't reflect what you do, okay? So only the first in an industry can really do this. So General Electric, for example, we don't know what they do, but they're the first in the industry of what they did, so that's okay. So there's a lot of things about generic names. And let's The good about generic names is that you don't fall into a high-risk category based on your name. Our company name is Credit Suite. The bad thing about that is just because the word credit is in our name, it is a flipping nightmare in a lot of things that we do. Bank accounts are harder to get set up. Merchant accounts are harder to get set up and keep. We tried to get set up with Experian to report credit to Experian, and they turned us down twice because they say we're a credit repair company. We don't even work with consumers. We don't even work with consumer credit. We don't even work with credit repair. But they still think of us as credit repair partially because the word credit is in our name. Plus, we're high risk with a lot of lenders and credit issuers because the word credit is in our name. It puts us as a high risk because we're in financial services. So that is some of the bad. By choosing a name that you are very specific, that says what you do, depending on what it is you do, the name itself can actually show that you're in a high-risk industry. It can help you get red flagged when you go to apply for credit or financing. That's a bad thing. Now, the good thing about having credit in our name is you know we work with credit. So by having the name Credit Suite, you know we work with credit. And when you look a little deeper, you see that we actually work with business credit. Unless you're the business credit reporting agencies like Experian, this is over their head. But you could probably figure that out by looking at our website when they don't have the ability to do so. So again, specific names versus general names. General names are great when it comes to getting money because the best thing is that when you're getting credit, you're not going to be looked at as high risk if you're in a high risk industry. Huge benefit. The drawback is that a general name doesn't tell people what you do. And the more you can tell people what you do easily, especially in your name, the better off that you are. So I've got friends with people, companies, names like Credit Restore, for example. They fix consumer credit. That's pretty obvious at what they do. So thanks for the loves and thank you guys for the shares. And Velvet, thanks for coming in. First day on Periscope. So again, when it comes to generic, there are good and there are bad. The bad is that people won't know what you do. The good is that if you're in a high-risk industry, you're at least not tipping off credit issuers to what you do. So some things to consider. Number 5 mistakes or pitfall to avoid when choosing business names and entity are mashed up names. Combined words and partial words often look bad. Okay, so work best if elements relate to the product or service. So let me give you an example here. If you're going to put the word business credit in your name, you wouldn't want to use a partial word like biz, B-I-Z, credit. B-I-Z credit. It might sound and look cool, but a partial word is very hard to explain and it's hard to scale. Okay, it really works best if the elements relate to the product or service. Your name relates again to the product or service. So again, when you first set up a business name, you don't think about these things, okay? But I'll give you an example. Every time I tell somebody what our name is, I say Credit Suite, that's S-U-I-T-E. So they don't say Credit Suite, because there's some goofy dude out there that types in the word sweet like candy is sweet. So you have to think about these things when you name your business, okay? It's very important. So, for example, when you're coming in, you need to make sure that you don't choose a mashed up name, a name that combines different things or shortens different things, because then every single time you give them your website or your name, you have to explain it. And I'm telling you, it's a pain in the butt. So you always want to try to make sure that it's not a mashed up name, a combination, etc., etc. If you're going to choose something like that, choose something weird, a few letters, a handful of letters, something that's easy to spell. Choose something that's easy to spell, something that's easy to pronounce, something that's easy to explain to people without you having to spell it. If you are going to say, so again, if your name was ABC Biz Credit, ABC Biz Credit with B-I-Z being instead of business credit. Well, now I have to spell that every time. Hey, what's your website? It's ABC Biz Credit. That's ABC B-I-Z C-R-E-D-I-T. Every time I say the name, I have to explain it. I have to spell it. Try to avoid that. So the problem with the play on names, combining complicated names or combining them into one, shortening the word business to biz, for example, B-I-Z, is every time you say the name, every time you give somebody your website, you have to explain that. And as you scale and grow your business, it really, really, really becomes an absolute nightmare. Now, that being said, I will tell you what else. Make sure you avoid long names. Nobody likes long names. Somebody tried to sell me the domain the other day, businesscreditmonitoring.com. No. If I'm going to sell business credit monitoring, I'm going to choose something that's about 3 to 5 letters to sum it up, because that's easy to go to. Nobody wants to go type in the URL, businesscreditmonitoring.com. It's too long. So I always personally prefer 1 or 2 syllable names. Or if you come in and are able to shorten a name as short as possible, it's the best thing for you. So for example, NAV. That's a great name. It's 3 letters, NAV. And almost anybody's going to know how to spell NAV. NAV, N-A-V. So that's a great name, okay? But when you use a long name that has 2, 3 different words in it, then that's something every time somebody types in your name, they have to spell out that entire thing. It's creating a barrier between you and your customer. The other thing with choosing a name is don't even think about picking a name until you see if that domain's available. It's extremely important. I pick names, make a list of all my potential business names, then I go in to GoDaddy and I see if the domain's available. If the domain's not available, do not take the name. The last company I owned, the name was Elite Credit. I didn't own EliteCredit.com. It was a real problem. A lot of my customers went to EliteCredit.com to find me and found a competitor. So you don't want to do that. You need to make sure your domain's available. One of my friends owns a complex down here, an inside sports soccer complex. He told a competitor, as dumb as this is, what he was doing in the name. The competitor went and bought his domain. So keep it on the down low. And if you find potential names you want, make sure they're not too long. Make sure they're easy to spell. Make sure you can just tell people what it is and they know exactly how to spell it, so you don't have to spell it out for them. And then make sure the domain's available. If you can't get yourdesiredcompanyname.com, do not get it. I'm telling you, when you're small, it might be okay. But as you get bigger, you're going to lose a lot of customers driving it. And as you really get big, then all of a sudden, somebody else owns your URL, and they're going to make it very difficult for you to ever buy it back from them because you're pushing so much traffic accidentally to them. So a lot of things to mind as we're talking about names. Now, number 6, okay, deliberately misspelled names. So, for example, was Toys R Us, right? Toys R Us, and she didn't put an S here. Let me see. I'll do it right now. Here you go. Okay, Toys R. All right. Toys R Us. So Toys R Us, okay, is a perfect example of a misspelled name. Not really misspelled, but the R is turned around, right? So you can do this. A big corporation like this can happen. You probably can't do this. You don't want to misspell, okay? Because then you have to explain it every time, again, because it's explained. So customers don't know spelling and pronunciation. Okay, so for example, Xerox is an exception. They're a huge company. But a lot of people don't know very well about spelling and punctuation. So and I forget the name of it. But Word will go through when you type up a document, and it will actually tell you the grade level of person that the content you've written fits within. Are you writing at a 3rd grade level? Are you writing at a 12th grade level? Are you writing at a, college degree level? You always want to write at a lower level because a lot of the people that you're talking to don't have high level education. So that's something to think about. Spotted a spelling mistake there, mate? I know. My whiteboard person messes up a bunch of stuff. I don't know what she's doing. She spelled Equifax wrong. That's embarrassing. So if there's misspellings, excuse me, what happens is my whiteboard does all of its content. And what happens is she eventually gets tired, and then she does misspell something. So guys, if you... My apologies. I promise spell check caught it. She just made a mistake, and that's cool. I let it go. So that being said, don't misspell the name. Again, every time you would tell somebody your company name, every time you tell them your website, you have to explain that it's misspelled. So you don't want to come and do that every single time. You might think you're smart because somebody else has ABC Business Credit, and you say, well, I want ABC Business Credit, so I'll do ABC Business with a Z credit instead. ABC BIZ something something. Well, you don't want to do that, because if you misspell it, every time you tell anybody your name or your domain, you have to explain that, and it's going to cost you a lot of business, especially as you start. Don't deliberately misspell names or turn letters around like you see with Toys R Us. Now again, high-risk industry flag names, bail bonds, ammo, X-rated, materials, pawn shops. These are all high-risk industries. If you choose a name that reflects you're in high risk, then that alone can get you denied for credit. Okay, and why are you a broker? That's awesome. I don't know what that means. I think you're a troll. But you can clarify your question. If you're a troll, we'll say goodbye shortly. Okay, so your company doesn't need those terms in its name. You don't want those terms in your name if you can avoid them, because that alone can get you denied. Chico's bail bonds example can be Chico's. Okay, the problem with Chico's bail bonds, it does say what you do. It does tell people exactly what you do, but anytime you go to get money, you need to know that the name itself is going to make it more difficult for you to actually access capital. So let's look at a list of these, and I'll show you some of these. So again, you don't want to come in and choose names that reflect that you're in high risk. When you do, that automatically can get you denied. And right now I'm going to pull up a list of these so you can see a bunch of high-risk industries, because a lot of people ask, is the industry that I'm in high risk? So what I'll do is I'll actually pull up a list right now of high-risk industries so you can see. So you want to avoid any kind of high-risk industries. Now, why? Because, again, merchant accounts, bank accounts, business credit, when it comes to getting many different types of financing, all these things become more difficult to do just because of your name. I once, when I had my credit company on the consumer side, had my bank account shut down just because the word credit was in my name. I've had merchant accounts deny me and cancel my merchant account just because the word credit was in my name. So when you're doing it, try to avoid. So here's an example. There's two kinds. These are restricted industries that will automatically get you declined from any kind of credit and loans. And you can see here, ammunition, bail bonds, check cashing, energy, oil, finance, gaming, loans for speculative purchases, pawn shops, political campaigns, public administration, X-rated products. High-risk industries just make you more stringent guidelines. So if credit issuers see these in your name, or lenders, they're going to make it more difficult for you to get approved. Agricultural, auto, recreational vehicle sales, courier sales, computers, dry cleaners, entertainment, general contractors, gasoline, gas stations, healthcare, special trade, hotels, motels, jewelry, limousine services, long-distance over-the-road trucking, mobile or manufactured home sales. Okay, phone sales, real estate agents broker, real estate agent developers, restaurants, software. This is a good overview list from our finance suite of industries that can get you an automatic decline or make it more difficult for you to get it. Remember, this isn't just about getting money. This is also about getting a merchant account to accept credit cards. It's about getting PayPal to deny you for a merchant account. It's about bank accounts not being able to be obtained, or bank accounts being canceled beyond getting credit and financing. All these things happen when you have a name that indicates you're in one of those high-risk industries, which is why it's something that you really, really, really want to be. We went through 8. We added a little bonus here, as we do. We always add a little bonus, okay? And the bonus here is going to be bad URLs. Okay, so make sure your company name looks good on a URL. Short numbers are a problem. Long are probably okay. So again, if you're putting in 3 girls toy shop, you probably want to avoid the number 3. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're careful here. You want to make sure that the URL makes sense as well. Don't get something that's a misspelled URL. Make sure it looks good and it's easy to type in online, because that's where people are going to search. So again, in summary, choose your entity with care. A lot of things are at stake here. Whether you're liable for what you do in your business when you choose the wrong entity, how you actually pay taxes. Again, what we found is a corporation here is the best way to go, where you actually can help not pay as many taxes, because with an S Corp, you can move taxes to your personal and pay the profit or loss that the business has can roll over to personal. But as you get bigger, you could change to a C Corp and let the company pay its own taxes.
taxes. Either way, as a corporation, you help limit your liability because you and the business are separate from each other, okay? Also, as a corporation, you can actually decide the amount of shares that everybody owns, whereas with a sole proprietorship and partnership, you don't typically get those options. Remember, generic names are good if you're in a high-risk industry because it won't tip people off that you are. And it makes it easy to get merchant accounts and and bank accounts and loans and credit. But it's also tough because potential customers have no reason to check you. They don't even know what you do. It's good if you could choose a short name that reflects exactly what you do. Avoid misspelled names. Avoid names that are mashed up and multiple words put together or shortened words. It's going to confuse people, and you're going to have to explain it every time you say your business name. Again, avoid those ones we looked at that indicate you're in a high-risk industry. And avoid bad URL names, okay? Make it simple. Again, if you're going to put 3 Girls Toy Shop, then you probably want to spell it out. It makes more sense than you coming in and putting something short, even like the number 3. So choose your entities with care, because if you don't, you've got consequences, as we talked about here, but there's also benefits by choosing the right name and the right entity, including that they can save you money and help you get approved for more money. A little bit of a different topic than what we typically talk about, but I wanted to dive into this because so many people ask me about choosing the right name and choosing the right entity that I wanted to talk about the biggest pitfalls that we see people fall into when choosing a name and choosing an entity. So again, hopefully you've got a good information about what to name your business, researching the name of your business, making sure the URL is available, avoiding misspelled names and shortened names and mismatched names, making sure that you choose an entity like a corporation where you're not personally liable for what happens in your business, and you can separate your business and consumer liability, where you can decide with a corporation whether the taxes carry to your personal tax return like an S Corp, or they come and you're taxed separately like a C Corp. So hopefully you got a little bit of information. If you came in late today, go back to Periscope. This is available for replay. And I will not, for those of you that follow on Facebook, I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be in transit tomorrow to a conference on the West Coast, but I will see you back here live on Periscope next week. And to give you we're going to be talking about 7 reasons you should build business credit and 7 ways to do it. We're going to tell you exactly where business credit reporting agencies actually get your data, where they get your information. We're going to be talking about 5 critical factors that determine your business credit worthiness as well. So a lot of cool things are going to be coming, and we're going to be actually talking even more about loans and all different types of things as well. So somebody said,
when somebody has ink behind their name, it means they're incorporated. It means they're a corporation, and you can be incorporated as an S Corp or a C Corp. The difference is where your profit and loss goes. If you claim a profit with an S Corporation, the profit carries to your personal tax returns. You only pay taxes once. You pay taxes on the profit or your income individually and for the business. A C Corp, you and the business are separate. You pay taxes for the business. You pay taxes as an individual. So hopefully that helps you all. I'll be back here next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and you just got a good look at the things to come. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. If you missed this, go back and watch a replay on Periscope, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 4 o'clock.